In this video, I'll talk about my script workflow from idea to the final product. This would work best for anyone who's a solo creator and is looking to organize the otherwise overwhelming production process and have a checklist at every step. And I know there are thousands of videos on this, but I had to create my own workflow because none of them worked for me. Either they were overly simplistic and did not really provide any guardrails, or were super complicated to execute for someone who does not have a team. So as a solo creator, here is my 6-stage workflow that I've built out on Notion to bring method to my creative madness. So within the 6-stage workflow, the first step is to decide on what is the structure of your story. This step typically takes me about 1 to 2 hours, and I'm looking to achieve a couple of things in this. The first step is to log the structure of the story. For this, I rely on Whimsical to be my drawing board, which is embedded within the Notion page of my video, so that I have everything in one place. For the type of content I create, I typically rely on a palette of 5 story structures, and I experiment with them before I identify the structure of choice. For instance, let's say I'm creating a video about improving click-through rate on thumbnails, and let's see how different story structures would actually change the lens with which you would approach that story. Let's say we take the first structure, which is the linear structure. The idea within this story structure is to break down and present the information in a sequential order. So if we take the same topic, which is around improving your click-through rate on your thumbnails, and use this particular structure, the theme of the story could be about 5 steps to increase your click-through rate on your thumbnails. In contrast, let's say if I were to use the problem solution story structure, which is all about identifying the problem and then coming up with a solution, one of the lenses with which I can approach this story is 3 reasons why your click-through rate is low and how to fix it. I filled out the table for the other 3 story structures as well. You can pause the video at this point and read through it. And let me know in the comment section in case you're looking for more examples on this. The broader point being that the content that you would cover in either of these story structures would kind of be the same. The only change would be the lens with which you would approach that story. The second thing I focus on is identify the segments that I need within a structure to tell a compelling story. For example, in my last video I talked about the 5 trends that YouTubers are using to grow. The moment I had that idea, I knew I had to talk about what the trend was and then connect it with what the creators need to do with that trend, because that is where the real value was. And once I decided on the listicle structure for that particular story, I sat down to identify what are some segments that I would need to either bridge or to expand on the story. And it came naturally to me that I needed a couple of segments to bridge the 2 main segments. Number 1, why is the trend happening? And number 2, how does it impact creators? And another segment to expand on how creators can leverage the trend by adding a segment about examples of some of the creators who are already riding the trend. And I continue to spend time on this particular step until I'm 80% sure about 3 things. 1, the chosen structure is the most interesting angle for this particular concept. Number 2, the structure and the identified segments make the story digestible. Number 3, the identified segments answer the most critical questions that the viewer may have while watching the video. The next step is to ask yourself if you have a unique perspective on the story. This step, rightfully so, takes me the most time, about 6 to 10 hours depending on the topic. In this step, I focus on 2 things. The first thing being to validate that people are actually searching for this topic. To get an idea, I have a checklist of 4 steps. The first thing I do is jump to TubeBuddy's free keyword explorer. Type in my topic and check if the topic hits the green zone for monthly search volume. The second thing I look at is the views per hour, also known as the VPH across the search results. You can download these free plugins from vidIQ or Creator ML to get these numbers showing on your YouTube interface. Ideally, I want to see a healthy VPH across the top ranking videos. The third thing I look for is that the top performing videos include a small channel as well. This would indicate that this topic has the potential to fuel the growth of a small channel disproportionate to its size. And the last thing I look for is if the top ranking videos include old videos, because that shows that there is a potential for a new video to replace the old one. My second goal is to analyze the competition. From a metrics standpoint, I go back to the TubeBuddy plugin and check if the competition and the optimization strength indicators are in the green zone. If they are in the green zone, it signals me that some of the top ranking videos currently are not maybe optimized or as relevant to this particular topic. The second thing I do is I dive into the comment section of the top performing videos to uncover questions or subtopics that people were hoping to be covered in these videos. And lastly, I watch some of the top performing videos to get an idea if my concept is unique or not. If I feel that I'm not adding any value, I drop the topic altogether. Based on the learnings from this exercise, I revisit the story skeleton before I get into the research zone. In most cases, it would mean that I would add or subtract a segment. I rely on sources such as books, podcasts, interview, research papers. In the comment section, let me know what are some other sources that you guys rely on to make sure that you have a unique angle for your story. I would love to know and probably try it out in the next video. Whatever I find, I continue to organize it within my whimsical drawing board. The idea is to use the story skeleton to organize my research, which would eventually feed my script. Essentially, the story skeleton will end up becoming something that only lacks my tone of voice before one can consider it a script. Once I know that I have a solid structure and a unique take on the concept, I jump to the last step in the iterative process, where I answer the question, what would be an irresistible packaging for this concept? And packaging in this context being the title and the thumbnail of the video. This step typically takes me about 4 to 6 hours, which includes the designing part of it as well. While this is not a guide on how to create the perfect thumbnail, let me talk about my process at a high level because it does tie back to the scripting process. There are a couple of things that I do at this stage, and from this point on, I rely on Notion primarily to keep me organized. One, I do comparative research, which in this case is all about collecting these compelling titles and thumbnails that you come across on this particular topic. My objective broadly is threefold, and I'm looking to, number 1, spot a pattern of what's working for my competitors. Number 2, find an opportunity to go against the grain and stand out. And number 3, identify what did not work for my competitors and not repeat those mistakes. For the last objective, I rely on Creator ML's free plugin, which helps me view the versions of the thumbnails that did not work for the other creators. This tells me what to avoid when I'm creating a thumbnail for my video. Once I have everything in my Notion page, I do a few things. Number 1, I pick out the keywords that I want to use for this topic. Number 2, I identify the 3 to 4 elements that I need to have in the thumbnail. Next, I try to understand the different curiosity gaps that the top ranking videos are using. And lastly, I decide on the type of thumbnail that I'm looking to create. Let me expand on that a bit. Let's go back to the topic that we were discussing earlier, which was about improving click-through rate. Logically speaking, we can use one of the two types of thumbnails. One idea could be using a result showcase kind of a thumbnail, and the second one could be a secret recipe kind of a thumbnail. In case I hit a creative roadblock, I jump into my repository of thumbnails classified by type, which helps me think clearly for this step. If you're looking to get access to this particular repository and the entire Notion workflow, you can use the link in the description. Once I'm through with the analysis phase, I get into the creator zone. For this, I write down the title ideas that I think will work well, and while I'm doing that, my Notion table keeps me in check that I don't go over 70 characters, as anything beyond that would most likely get truncated in one of the many devices for our viewers. If everything makes sense and I don't really need to wait for the shoot day to create my thumbnail, I design it and I test it out on testmythumbnails.com, which is a mock YouTube feed. At this stage, I'm looking to jump to the next step. But how do I know if I'm ready for it? I can be certain that I'm ready if I know, number 1, I have a topic that people are watching content on. Number 2, I have a structure that makes it easy for people to follow and keeps them engaged throughout the video. Number 3, I have a unique take that gives value to my audience. Number 4, I have a title and a thumbnail that makes a compelling promise that will drive clicks on the video. Number 5, and most importantly, I have a story skeleton that will deliver on the promise in full. If I can say a big yes to everything on the list, that is when I jump to the actual script writing step, where I ask myself if I can visualize the video that I'm trying to produce. This is the part where I have my story skeleton on one side of the screen and my Notion scripting template on the other side. On average, it takes me about 3 to 4 hours to write my script, because I write my script word for word. It helps me make sure that my script is concise and that every sentence adds value. There were multiple issues that I would face when I would try to use someone else's workflow. For example, as a YouTuber, you cannot detach the process of thinking about your voiceovers and your visuals. The workflow of choice should enable that. Secondly, all these tactics that I would come across, I wouldn't know how to fit those into my workflow. So in my Notion workflow, I have these checklists at every step. And over time, the hope is that this would become second nature for me. With that intent, I embedded a few features into my scripting template. My scripting template has the usual 3 main sections: intro, value, and the outro. Within each section, there are these tables which help me leverage the tactics that I learned every now and then. First, to make sure that I think about the voiceover and the visuals together, I have these columns where I detail out my notes on the visuals for each line of the voiceover. This also helps me organize my shoot day because I can filter out for the exact shots which I need to record on the shoot day. And then I have these other columns as well, which convert my voiceover notes into the time duration it would take for me to deliver them in a video. For example, I would know if I need to trim down my intro section if it is going beyond the 45-second mark. At this point, if you have followed all the instructions to the T, you should be able to visualize the video in your head even before you hit the record button. From this point on, you shouldn't be looking to change many things in your script, but there are still a few things that you can do to simplify your editing process. In the next phase, which is the production phase, you ask yourself, can you build some air cover? On the shoot day when I sit down to record, there are a couple of things that I do on the fly. This typically means that I would be spending 15 to 20 minutes extra on the shoot day. One, I add some safety shots. This is where I record some additional generic statements just to give myself freedom during the editing phase. An example of that would be that if I want to have the freedom to move around the different segments within a listicle video, beyond the script I would record phrases like to start with or lastly, just to have that flexibility when I'm transitioning between segments. The second thing I do is give alternate takes for the same sentence, which gives me options to choose from when I'm editing the A-roll. Because sometimes a sentence makes more sense when you're reading it versus when you're listening to it. And such sentences are easier to pick during the recording phase. And next we jump to the last phase, which is the post-production phase. This is where you need to be heartless about your own content. Let me explain. In this step, the one question that I continue to ask myself is there anything that I can trim from the timeline? This typically takes me 1 to 2 hours, and I do a couple of things in this step. One, once I've filtered the takes, I continue to delete sentences from the timeline until I come to a point where if I delete another sentence, the narrative will not flow seamlessly or will sound incomplete. Two, once I've added the B-roll footage as well, I make one of my friends watch the video and get their feedback on where do they feel the video seems slow. For those parts, if the conclusion is that I need to re-record, then I have a couple of options to explore. One, I look for a creative way to just do the voiceover and cover it up with some B-roll footage using Artlist as my savior. By the way, if you're interested in using Artlist, you can use the affiliate link in the description of this video. That link will get you 2 additional months for free on your annual plan. And 2, which is my last resort, if I absolutely need that talking head shot, I wear the cape again and re-record. If you want to use the Notion template that I discussed in this video, you can access it using the link in the description. And don't forget to like and comment on this video and subscribe to this channel for all future videos. Lastly, I would like to thank all of you who responded to the poll that I created to know what you guys wanted me to talk about next. If there is something that you're struggling with as a creator, post about it in the comment section below, and I will try my best to make a video about it. With that, I am Faraz, this is Creator Talk, and I'll see you in the next one.